The Galactic Coalition had enjoyed peace for 300 years. 47 different alien species worked together across thousands of worlds. Their cities floated among the stars, connected by beams of light that carried messages faster than thought. Wars were ancient history. Disputes ended with words, not weapons. Admiral Kethara of the Ethereal Collective stood in the central command station, her translucent form shimmering as data streams flowed through her consciousness. The morning reports showed the usual peaceful activities: trade negotiations between the crystal-based Resonance Commonwealth and the aquatic Depth Builders, new terraforming projects in the Outer Rim, cultural exchanges that had been running for decades. Then the alarms started screaming. Contact from Deep Space Monitoring Station Omega-7, announced the AI system, its voice calm despite the urgency of the alert. Detecting massive spatial disturbance in Sector 94 Alpha. Kethara's form solidified as she focused her attention. Display the readings. The holographic display showed something impossible. A structure was emerging from the dark space between galaxies, unfolding like a flower made of metal and energy. The sensors struggled to measure its size. Initial estimates suggested it was larger than most solar systems. "This must be a sensor malfunction," said Commander Vex of the Silicon Confederacy, his metallic voice echoing through the chamber. Nothing could be that large. But the readings continued to pour in from multiple stations. The object was real, and it was moving toward their galaxy with purpose. As they watched, it approached the outer rim system of Cygnus 12, home to a small mining colony. "Send a diplomatic probe," Kethara ordered. Standard first contact protocols. The probe reached Cygnus 12 within hours. Its quantum communicators broadcasting welcome messages in 47 languages, along with mathematical formulas and cultural gifts. The response came back as pure static dot. Then Cygnus 12 disappeared. Not destroyed. Not evacuated. Simply gone, as if it had never existed. Where a star system had been, only empty space remained. The massive structure had somehow consumed everything. The star, its planets, the mining stations, even the asteroids. All of it converted into raw energy that flowed into the creature's hull. "Send the fleet," ordered Kethara, her form flickering with barely controlled emotion. Full deployment. The Coalition's finest warships moved toward the entity. They called it the Devourer because that was all it seemed to do. Each ship represented the pinnacle of galactic technology, gravity manipulators that could bend space itself, quantum disruptors that unmade matter at the atomic level, reality anchors that kept the laws of physics stable even in combat. The battle was a massacre. The Devourer's hull absorbed energy weapons like a sponge. Kinetic projectiles simply bounced off its surface. When the Coalition ships tried to use their gravity weapons, the creature's smaller craft phased through the distortions as if they didn't exist. Within 6 hours, the entire fleet was either destroyed or consumed. "What are we fighting?" whispered Sub-Commander Yella of the Verdant Compact, her plant-like form trembling. Nobody had an answer. The Devourer moved on to the next system, then the next. Each time, the same result: complete consumption, perfect efficiency. The Coalition's most advanced scientists studied the recordings, trying to understand how the creature worked. Their conclusions were terrifying. The Devourer adapted. Every weapon the Coalition used, every tactic they tried, the creature learned from it. By the time they deployed a new strategy, the Devourer had already developed countermeasures. It wasn't just eating their worlds. It was eating their knowledge. Emergency sessions of the Coalition Council became daily events. Representatives from all 47 species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, their voices raised in desperate debate. "We must evacuate to the Magellanic Clouds," declared Ambassador Zorth of the Mechanical Synthesis. "Distance is our only defense." "Impossible," replied High Thinker Quen of the Memory Keepers. "We lack the ships to move even a fraction of our population." "Then we negotiate," suggested Elder Frim of the Peaceful Current. "All life has wants, needs, desires. We find what it seeks." "It seeks everything," snapped Admiral Kethara. "It doesn't communicate, doesn't pause, doesn't show mercy. It simply consumes." The arguments continued as more systems vanished. The Outer Rim became a dead zone, empty space where thriving civilizations had existed for millennia. Refugee ships fled toward the core worlds, carrying fragments of destroyed cultures and stories of impossible destruction. Some species considered desperate measures. The Transcendent Circle proposed abandoning physical form entirely, uploading their consciousness into pure energy to escape the creature's hunger. The Deep Dwellers suggested retreating to pocket dimensions. The Starshapers wanted to accelerate stellar collapse, creating black holes to deny the Devourer resources. All the plans shared one common element: retreat. 3 centuries of peace had taught the Coalition many things, but not how to fight an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with or understood. As the Devourer continued its methodical advance toward the galactic core, consuming system after system with mechanical precision, Admiral Kethara noticed something strange in the council sessions. One member species had remained unusually quiet throughout the debates. The humans sat in their designated section, listening carefully but contributing little. They were one of the Coalition's newest members, having joined only 50 years ago after discovering quantum travel. Most species considered them primitive, barely evolved beyond their warlike origins. Their technology was crude compared to galactic standards, their ships bulky and inefficient. Their culture still marked by concepts like nationalism and individual sacrifice. Representative Chun, Kethara called out during a lull in the arguments. "Your species is yet to offer any suggestions. What is humanity's position on our current crisis?" The human representative stood slowly. Unlike the flowing, graceful forms of most Coalition species, she moved with economical precision. Her face bore an expression that seemed almost alien to the peaceful assembly: grim determination. "We're still analyzing the situation," Chan replied, her voice steady. "We'll have recommendations soon." The answer seemed inadequate given the crisis, but Kethara nodded and moved on to other speakers. She failed to notice the look that passed between Chun and the other human delegates. It was the look of people who had been waiting for exactly this conversation. In the depths of space, the Devourer continued its feast, unaware that somewhere in the galaxy, an old enemy was stirring. An enemy that had never forgotten how to fight. The human delegation worked through the night in their embassy quarters. Unlike the flowing architectural styles preferred by other species, the human building was blocky and functional. The walls were thick, the doors heavy, and every room had multiple exits. Other species found the design paranoid. Humans called it practical. Representative Sarah Chun spread holographic displays across the conference table. The data showed 3 centuries of Coalition military doctrine, ship designs, and tactical procedures. Everything the peaceful galaxy had developed to maintain order in a universe where conflict had been eliminated. "Look at this," said Captain Rodriguez, highlighting a section of Alliance fleet protocols. "Their entire command structure depends on AI coordination. Take out the quantum networks, and their fleets can't function." "It gets worse," added Dr. Petrov, pulling up technical specifications. "Energy shields with no kinetic backup. Weapons that require perfect targeting systems. Life support that shuts down if the main computers fail. They've optimized everything for efficiency." Chun nodded grimly. 50 years ago, when humanity first encountered the Coalition, they'd been amazed by the advanced technology. But military minds thought differently than engineers. While other species saw perfection, humans saw vulnerabilities. "The Coalition forgot something important," Chun said. Peace isn't the natural state of the universe. It's something you have to fight for. Humanity had spent their brief coalition membership quietly studying galactic technology. Not to improve it, but to understand how to break it. They'd noticed patterns that escaped their peaceful allies. Dependencies, single points of failure, assumptions built into every system. More importantly, they'd been preparing. Human ships carried redundant mechanical backups for every electronic system. Their weapons included chemical explosives alongside energy arrays. Their crews trained constantly for situations where their technology failed completely. The Coalition considered such preparations wasteful. Humans called them necessary. The alert came at dawn. The Devourer had reached the Sol system. Earth's evacuation began immediately. Not because humanity intended to surrender, but because what they planned to do would make their home system uninhabitable. Transport ships carried civilians to prepared shelters in nearby systems while the human fleet took defensive positions. Admiral Jackson stood on the bridge of the battleship Defiance, watching the Devourer approach. The creature was even more massive than the recordings suggested. Its surface writhed with activity as smaller constructs emerged like antibodies responding to an infection. All ships switch to manual control, Jackson ordered. Shut down eye coordination. Close quantum links. Go to radio communication only. The Coalition observers couldn't understand the logic. Without computer coordination, human fleet movements became crude and inefficient. But when the Devourer's first adaptation wave hit, trying to infiltrate their command systems, it found nothing to corrupt. The battle began like all the others. The Devourer's energy absorption fields deflected beam weapons. Its adaptive hull turned projectiles aside. Its smaller craft phased through shields and barriers. But then something different happened. When their energy weapons failed, human ships didn't retreat. They accelerated toward the enemy, ramming smaller constructs with reinforced hulls. When their missiles proved ineffective, they launched nuclear warheads, asteroid chunks, and concentrated chemical explosives. When the Devourer adapted to those, they abandoned their weapons entirely and used the ships themselves as kinetic projectiles. The creature faltered. For the first time since entering the galaxy, its consumption rate decreased. The smaller constructs, faced with enemies that changed tactics faster than the adaptation systems could respond, began to retreat. Admiral Jackson watched the tactical display with satisfaction. Humanity couldn't destroy the Devourer, but they were accomplishing something the Coalition thought impossible. They were hurting it. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than we can replace them," reported Commander Torres. "I know," Jackson replied. "Keep fighting." The Battle of Sol raged for 18 hours. Earth's orbital defenses fired everything they had. Kinetic slugs, fusion bombs, mass drivers launching chunks of lunar material. When those ran out, they improvised. Mining ships became suicide bombers. Cargo haulers dropped reactor cores into the enemy formation. Research vessels released experimental weapons that had never been tested. The human fleet died ship by ship, but each loss taught them something new about their enemy. They learned that the Devourer's adaptation systems worked in predictable patterns. They discovered weak points where the creature's hull was thinner. Most importantly, they proved that constant tactical changes could overwhelm even perfect adaptation. When the smoke cleared, humanity had lost 60% of their fleet. Luna was cracked in half, its debris field spreading across the system. Earth's surface bore massive scars from redirected enemy fire. But the Devourer had been forced to retreat for the first time in its assault on the galaxy. The Coalition Council reconvened in emergency session. This time, the human delegation sat at the center of attention. "How?" asked Admiral Kethara, her ethereal form bright with curiosity. "Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your ships are crude. Your weapons are primitive. How did you succeed where we failed? Chun stood before the assembly, her uniform bearing the scars of the battle she'd coordinated from Earth's command center. Because you've forgotten how to fight. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Representatives from peaceful species shifted uncomfortably. The concept of warfare was alien to most of them, a relic from their savage pasts. The devourer adapts to everything you throw at it, Chung continued. But it can only adapt to what it understands. You fight with predictable patterns, standardized procedures, optimized efficiency. We fight with chaos. She gestured to a display showing human tactical doctrine. When one approach fails, we try another. When that fails, we try something completely different. We don't optimize. We improvise. We don't calculate perfect solutions. We accept acceptable losses. The concept horrified many delegates. The idea of deliberately accepting casualties, of choosing inefficient methods, of abandoning careful planning, in favor of desperate improvisation went against everything the coalition represented. But your losses, protested Elder Frim. Surely the cost is too high. The cost of losing is higher, Chun replied bluntly. We can replace ships. We can't replace our civilization. Commander Vex of the Silicon Confederacy spoke up. What do you propose? Chun's expression grew even more serious. We teach you how to fight. All of you. Every species, every fleet, every world. The old way of warfare is dead. The Devourer made sure of that. If we're going to survive, you need to learn the human way. The chamber fell silent. 3 centuries of peace hung in the balance. Everything the coalition had built, everything they believed in, would have to change. The choice is yours, Chun said quietly. Learn to fight like us or die like the systems we've already lost. Admiral Kethara was the first to speak. What do we need to do? Chun smiled grimly. First, we throw out everything you think you know about combat. Then we start over, from the beginning. And we hope the galaxy survives the education. The transformation of the galaxy began that day. It would be painful, costly, and traumatic. But for the first time since the Devourer's arrival, the Coalition had hope. They were going to learn how to fight. Asterisk, the transformation began immediately. Across the galaxy, training centers opened on every major world. Coalition species that had known only peace for centuries struggled to understand concepts that humans considered basic. Colonel Martinez stood before a group of ethereal collective officers, their translucent forms shimmering with confusion. The primary rule of combat, she explained, is that there are no rules. Your enemy will not follow your expectations, your protocols, or your sense of fairness. One of the ethereals, Commander Silandros, spoke through their telepathic network. But without protocols, how do we coordinate? How do we maintain efficiency? You don't, Martinez replied bluntly. Efficiency gets you killed. Coordination makes you predictable. The moment you develop a pattern, the Devourer will exploit it. The psychological impact was devastating. Species that had evolved beyond conflict found themselves forced to rediscover instincts buried in their genetic memory. Therapy centers overflowed with beings suffering from what human psychologists recognized as combat stress. Entire worlds experienced collective anxiety attacks. The Crystalline Resonance Commonwealth struggled the most. Their entire culture was based on harmony and synchronized thought. The idea of deliberate discord, of breaking patterns and embracing chaos, caused fundamental fractures in their society. Some crystal entities simply shattered under the psychological strain, but gradually, changes emerged. The ethereal collective learned to weaponize their telepathic abilities, creating confusion fields that disrupted enemy coordination. The depth builders, master terraformers, who shaped worlds with their technology, began collapsing stars to deny the Devourer resources. The Verdant Compact discovered that their biological manipulation skills could create viruses designed to corrode enemy hull materials. Dr. Chun worked with alien psychologists to develop training programs that could overcome millions of years of peaceful evolution. Think of it as controlled chaos, she explained to a group of memory keepers. You're not abandoning your nature. You're expanding it. Meanwhile, the Devourer continued its advance. But now it faced something new, unpredictable resistance. When it attacked the industrial world of Kepler 442, expecting the usual organized defense, it instead encountered a chaotic swarm of improvised weapons. Mining ships converted into ram vessels, orbital factories that launched molten metal instead of manufactured goods, civilian transports that exploded like bombs when they made contact. The creature's adaptation systems, designed to counter logical tactics, struggled with the seemingly random nature of human-trained resistance. Each battle taught the Coalition new lessons in controlled chaos. The first major counteroffensive was a disaster. Despite weeks of training, alien crews reverted to their old habits under pressure. The attack on the occupied Vega system followed predictable patterns, and the Devourer consumed the entire assault fleet within hours. Admiral Cathera led the investigation into the failure. What went wrong? She asked Captain Zhang, one of the human advisors. They tried to fight a human battle with alien minds, Zhang replied. You can't just copy our tactics. You have to understand the thinking behind them. Asterisk. The second offensive showed improvement. Coalition forces attacking the Procyon system managed to maintain chaotic patterns for several hours before falling into predictable routines. They lost fewer ships and actually damaged some of the Devourer's smaller constructs. The third offensive was a qualified success. The assault on Wolf 359 forced the Devourer to retreat after 12 hours of combat. The creature left behind debris from its smaller entities, the first physical samples the Coalition had ever obtained. Analysis of the debris revealed disturbing information. The Devourer wasn't just a mindless consumer. It was learning, evolving, developing new strategies based on each encounter. Worse, it was incorporating captured Coalition technology into its own structure, creating hybrid constructs that combined alien efficiency with the creature's adaptive capabilities. It's getting smarter, reported Dr. Petrov during a strategy meeting. Each battle teaches it more about our methods. Then, we make sure each battle teaches it the wrong lessons, replied General Harrison. The human military coordinator. The new doctrine emphasized deception above all else. Feints within feints, false retreats, deliberate sacrifices designed to make the enemy overconfident. The Coalition forces began to think like guerrilla fighters, striking from unexpected angles and retreating before the Devourer could adapt. The psychological toll continued to mount. The peaceful harmonic concordance suffered a complete societal breakdown when their leadership, council, couldn't reconcile warfare with their core beliefs. They withdrew from active participation, instead offering only logistical support. But other species surprised themselves. The Mechanical Silicon Confederacy discovered that their logical minds, once freed from the constraints of peaceful protocols, excelled at calculating optimal chaos patterns. The aquatic depth builders used their three-dimensional thinking to develop attack formations that defied traditional spatial logic. Months passed. The galaxy burned. Entire systems became battlefields as the Devourer pushed toward the galactic core. Refugee populations swelled as world after world was evacuated ahead of the creature's advance, but the pattern began to shift. The Devourer's consumption rate slowed. Its smaller constructs showed hesitation before attacking. For the first time since entering the galaxy, it began to show what could only be described as caution. We're winning, Admiral Cathara announced during a Coalition Council session. Her ethereal form had grown more solid over the months of warfare, as if the conflict had given her substance. Are we? Asked Representative Chung. Or are we just teaching it to be a better killer? The question haunted them all. Intelligence reports suggested the Devourer was developing new capabilities, stealth technology based on captured coalition ships, weapons that mimicked human kinetic designs, even communication attempts that seemed designed to probe coalition psychology. It's trying to understand us, Dr. Petrov observed. Not just our technology, but our thinking patterns. Then we give it something to think about, suggested Colonel Martinez. The plan that emerged from those sessions was ambitious beyond anything the Coalition had attempted. Rather than trying to destroy the Devourer, they would attempt to fundamentally alter its nature. The weapon wasn't technological. It was conceptual. We're going to teach it to be human, Chun explained to the assembled military leaders. Not in body, but in mind. The preparation took weeks. Coalition forces gathered at the galactic core, where the supermassive black hole provided a natural defensive position. If the Devourer succeeded in consuming the black hole, the resulting gravitational collapse would destabilize the entire galaxy. As the creature approached for what everyone knew would be the final battle, human-trained Coalition forces prepared their most desperate gambit yet. They were going to fight the Devourer with something it had never encountered before: the concept of choice. Remember, Chun broadcast to all units, we're not trying to destroy it. We're trying to save it. The final battle was about to begin. The Devourer arrived at the galactic core like a storm made of metal and hunger. Its massive structure had grown during the campaign, incorporating technology from dozens of consumed civilizations. Hybrid constructs swarmed around its hull. Coalition energy weapons merged with the creature's adaptive systems, creating something more dangerous than either alone. Admiral Cathara stood on the command deck of the Coalition flagship Harmony's End, watching the enemy approach. Around her, representatives from every surviving species worked together in a way that would have been impossible before the war. Ethereals provided telepathic coordination, while Silicon Confederacy members calculated firing solutions. Depth builders monitored environmental systems, while verdant compact bioengineers prepared their viral weapons. All units, remember the mission, Cathara broadcast. We're not here to destroy the enemy. We're here to save it. The plan was desperate, born from months of studying the Devourer's behavior. Dr. Petrov had made a crucial discovery. The creature learned not just technology, but concepts. When it absorbed Coalition ships, it gained their knowledge. When it analyzed Coalition tactics, it began to understand Coalition thinking. The Devourer is trying to comprehend us, he had explained to the War Council. But it only understands consumption, efficiency, and growth. We need to teach it something else. The something else was choice. The concept that existence could have meaning beyond mere survival. That individuals could sacrifice themselves for others. That some things were worth preserving, even at the cost of efficiency. The battle began with the largest space engagement in galactic history. Coalition forces launched wave after wave of attacks, not to win, but to demonstrate. Each assault showed the Devourer something new about sacrifice, about choosing death over surrender, about fighting for principles rather than survival. Captain Rodriguez led a squadron of human fighters in a suicide run against the Devourer's sensor arrays. As his ship broke apart under enemy fire, he transmitted final words: "For the ones who come after us." The message wasn't meant for Coalition forces. It was meant for the creature itself. A demonstration of voluntary sacrifice that it's consumption-based. Thinking couldn't process. Commander Silandros of the Ethereals coordinated a telepathic assault that linked the minds of thousands of Coalition crew members. Instead of tactical data, they shared memories, first loves, childhood fears, moments of joy and sorrow. The psychic noise overwhelmed the Devourer's smaller constructs, forcing them to experience individual consciousness for the first time. The real breakthrough came when Dr. Yunwei Chen led a boarding party into the Devourer's central structure. Using outdated human technology that the creature's systems ignored as primitive, they fought through corridors of living metal and adaptive defenses. Their weapon wasn't a bomb or a virus. It was a simple data storage device containing the collected stories of every coalition species. Myths and legends, historical accounts, personal memoirs. 10,000 years of individual experiences, choices, and beliefs. Upload everything, Chun ordered, as the boarding party fought desperately to protect the data transfer. Around them, the Devourer's internal defenses tried to stop what they perceived as an invasion. They couldn't understand that this wasn't an attack. The stories flowed into the creatures, collective consciousness like poison to a hive mind. For the first time in its existence, the Devourer experienced doubt. Individual narratives clashed with its unified purpose. Concepts of personal identity created fractures in its perfect efficiency. The effect was immediate and devastating. The creature's consumption rate plummeted as it struggled to process contradictory impulses. Parts of its structure began acting independently, some continuing to attack while others hesitated or even withdrew. "It's working," reported Admiral Kethara as she watched the enemy formation break apart. "The central coordination is failing, but the cost was enormous." The coalition fleet was being systematically destroyed. Entire species were reduced to scattered survivors. Ancient civilizations burned in the vacuum of space as their homeworlds. Defenders made final stands. The climax came when the Devourer, driven by confusion and internal conflict, began to consume the galactic core's black hole. The gravitational distortions threatened to tear apart local space-time, potentially destroying not just the coalition, but reality itself in this region of the galaxy. Captain Sarah Chun, daughter of the representative who had started humanity's involvement in the war, made the final sacrifice. She piloted her ship directly into the creature's core consciousness, broadcasting one last message as her vessel was consumed. "You have a choice. You can be more than hunger." The words, backed by a lifetime of memories and experiences, penetrated deeper than any weapon. For the first time in its existence, the Devourer truly understood what it meant to choose. The effect was instantaneous and total. The creature's unified consciousness shattered like glass, fragmenting into billions of individual entities. Some continued their original programming, drifting into deep space to consume distant matter. Others began exploring, curious about the universe they had only seen as food. Still others simply stopped, contemplating existence for the first time. A few remained near the galactic core. Their hunger transformed into something else entirely. They began creating rather than consuming, building strange structures that seemed to serve no purpose except to exist as expressions of individual will. The war was over, but the galaxy that emerged from it was fundamentally changed. The Coalition's billions of casualties had been reduced to scattered millions. Entire species existed now only in the memory banks of surviving ships. The great cities and trade networks lay in ruins, but something new had been born. The survivors carried with them hard-won knowledge about the nature of existence, the value of individual choice, and the importance of being willing to fight for what they believed in. Admiral Cathara stood in the ruins of the Coalition Council Chamber, now relocated to a small space station. Representatives from 37 species remained. 10 had been lost entirely. The ethereal's form had grown solid and permanent, shaped by months of war into something more substantial than her species had ever known. "We need new principles," she announced to the assembly. "The old ways of peace and efficiency are gone. We must build something that can survive in a universe where threats like the Devourer exist." Representative Martinez, who had inherited her position after Sarah Chun's sacrifice, stood to address the survivors. Humanity offers our experience, but we can't lead this. The new galaxy belongs to all of us. The civilization that slowly emerged from the ashes was harder, more pragmatic, and more human than its predecessor. But it was also wiser. They had learned that peace wasn't the absence of conflict. It was something that had to be constantly defended. They built their new fleets with redundant systems and human-style chaos protocols. They trained their children in both advanced technology and primitive backup methods. Most importantly, they remembered the lesson the Devourer had taught them, that consciousness, choice, and individual will were the most powerful forces in the universe. Years later, when exploration ships encountered the scattered fragments of the former Devourer, they found something unprecedented. Some of the entities were still consuming, but others had become artists, builders, and explorers. A few had even begun communicating, sharing their experiences of learning to choose their own existence. The galaxy had survived, barely. But it had survived as something entirely new, a civilization that understood both the power of peace and the necessity of being prepared to fight for it. Humanity, once dismissed as primitive warriors, found themselves the teachers of a new age. They had given the galaxy the greatest gift possible, the knowledge that survival wasn't just about efficiency or power, but about the courage to choose what kind of existence was worth having. The stars themselves seemed brighter in this new age,